Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing another movie review for you all. This movie is a horror film from Germany, German language English subs, released in the year 2022, directed by Andy Fetcher, and this film is called Old People. So Old People is about the elderly generation that feel as though they have been abandoned. So you have an elderly man that has been in a nursing home for quite a while. When his health deteriorated rapidly, the daughter really couldn't care for him anymore, so she had to send him to this home, and now she hasn't seen him in quite a while. Now this mother has a daughter that was very close to her grandfather, and so there's a lot of guilt within this mother, and so there is a wedding of her sister in a location very close to this nursing home. So this is an opportunity for the mother to really mend the relationship with her father. But when she gets there, she realizes that the nursing home is really run down and it's short staffed. Not everyone is getting the treatment that they need, and a lot of these elderly people are just wandering around aimlessly. So the father doesn't talk anymore, and he actually has that sense of resentment towards his daughter, but she really wants him to go to the wedding celebrations with them. It would actually mean a lot to her, and especially her daughter. So he reluctantly does this, but as the night unfolds, something very strange is going on. The elderly are attacking the younger generation, not only in this nursing home, but it's a widespread event. And so what started off as a wedding celebration is going to turn into a night of survival as this elderly onslaught is about to hit. So what happens at that point on is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Old People. This is definitely a movie that falls victim to a very bland title. It's a very unimaginative title. It's a title that doesn't really entice you to go out there and watch it. So that's the reason why I ignored it for quite a while. But then I realised that it kept coming up on my recommendations. And so I thought to myself, why is it coming up on my recommendations? And the reason is, it's because it's a foreign horror film. It's a German horror film. Now, Germany aren't as prolific as they used to be in the past, but whenever a German horror film comes up, I definitely have to go and see them because they are few and far between. And so I thought to myself, this is going to be a very silly film. It's going to be like Rabid Grannies, where it's going to be popcorn sort of horror. And so not knowing what to expect because of the fact no one ever talks about it, I went in there with a lot of curiosity. And after watching this movie, I will say that I was surprised at how emotional this film was. It's a very mature film and nothing like Rabid Grannies. And I definitely feel as though this is a victim of people who don't want to multitask as they're watching a movie. You know, reading and watching is definitely something a lot of people can't be bothered with, especially in this generation. And Old People is definitely another movie that you could put to the pile of victims of laziness. And so if you are a fan of subtitled horror films and you haven't heard of this movie, hopefully after this review it'll entice you to go out there and watch it, because I feel as though it definitely deserves to be seen. And the reason why it needs to be seen is because it's such a symbolic horror film. It's such a melancholic horror film because it's a movie about abandonment. It's a movie about resentment at being forgotten, at being pushed to the side and basically left to die. And so the nursing home in this movie symbolised that sense of abandonment. It was very run down, it was dilapidated, there weren't enough nurses to care for the elderly, and they were just wandering around waiting to die. And so you could feel the resentment in these elderly people. You could feel the pain, the sadness, the melancholy in each and every one of these people. So when they're inflicting these horrible events, I just felt as though it was a set of tragic events, because they weren't necessarily enjoying it, but it was that resentment that had built up to a point where it just boiled over. And so it almost felt like these were zombies, but they were heartbroken. They were forgotten by their loved ones, and so it came to a point where they had to inflict that sense of violence in order to be remembered. And so this is the whole melancholic feeling that the film has. It's a very dark and depressing film. It's a very dreary movie as far as cinematography is concerned, so it does make a very dark experience, and that dark experience really complements the horror set pieces. I thought as though this is an incredibly creepy horror film. Some of the set pieces I thought were very, very brutal. The violence is very hard hitting, but again, the violence is a result of that resentment, a result of that abandonment. So as these people are being killed, it didn't feel like cannon fodder. It actually felt like there was a strong emotional connection to each and every person that was dying, because it was at the hands of people that they once loved. But as I said, that abandonment shaped someone into a zombie, and this is exactly the feeling that I got from this movie. I thought as though the soundtrack was very melancholic. It really intensified the emotions that we're actually going through, not only the characters but also the viewer. I thought as though the onslaught and the fight for survival of this family, I thought as though the fear factor was definitely there, because they were likeable people. And unfortunately sometimes work life, life in general gets in the way, and you can actually push aside, the elderly. And this is why this is that set of tragic circumstances, is that you're busy in life, you're very stressed with life, and because you've got someone in a nursing home, you can tend to forget them. And so this is something that is a consequence of that forgetfulness and of that abandonment, and this is what really intensifies the emotional response that this movie has. So the acting I thought was all absolutely fantastic. The villains are not your standard villains. They are very three-dimensional. They are extremely sympathetic, and so it's just very sad to see these people dying, and it's definitely a breath of fresh air as far as a horror film is concerned. If I have issues with the movie, some of the editing here and there could have been sharpened up a little bit. I thought the ending was a little bit generic, but overall it's still a very different type of zombie / infected film that's really going to make you think about how we treat the elderly and the sadness that comes about the fact of people feeling as though they've been forgotten. So overall, for Old People, I'm going to give this one 4 stars. Go out there and see it. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later. Bye.